Okay. So I don't know all your names yet. If you would turn your name please to me. Thanks. All right, so let's call the meeting to order. Seeing that we have a quorum, I'll call the roll today. John Ryder will be joining us at 9. Carl Kaminsky.
Present.
Larry Smith.
Here.
Tracy Van Bergen.
Here.
I'm here. Do I say your name? Keelan?
Kalen.
Kaylin, I'm sorry.
Here.
Abigail.
Yes.
Mike.
Here.
Mike Freer. I got Scott Hayek. Hey, Jack. Okay. And do we have Mike Turner or Chris? T there? T. Oh, shit. I'm looking right past you. I'm sorry. That's okay. All right, so we have a quorum. We'll call the meeting to order. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the January 25th meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Larry Smith, second by Carl Kaminsky. All those in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any public comments? I don't think so. Member comments? Okay, we move on to election officers of the officers. We needed to do this in January, but we missed it.
My fault.
No, that's okay. And so I'll open the nominations for the chairman.
I would like to nominate
Tracy.
Mr. Kearns as chair.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, second by Chris. Any other nominations?
Make a motion to close the nominations.
Okay, second to that, Carl Kaminsky. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Vice Chairman, nominations?
Nominate Tim Huff.
Okay. Is there a second for Tim? Tracy Van Bergen, seconds, Tim. Is there any other nominations? Is there a motion to close the nominations? Larry?
I'll second it.
Carl moves. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those in favor of Tim Huff?
Aye.
All right, well, that was quick and painless today. And we're ahead, so we're waiting for Tyler Wilkie. I don't know if he's here yet, but we have 2 interviews today. We have Tyler Wilkie and Brad and is that a misspell? Is that his?
No, that's correct. And Grayson. He is here.
Oh, you're here.
Yep, I'm here.
You know what? You're here, so we're gonna call you in.
Just call him Brad, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the problem is Bradley, but I feel like I'm in trouble whenever people call me Bradley. I think of my mom yelling at me when I'm a kid, so.
All right. Brad, you're up and tell us about yourself and why you'd want to be on the tech committee.
Perfect. Yeah, my name is Brad Andresen. Please don't call me Bradley unless I'm in trouble. I am the ecologist and horticulturalist for the village of Algonquin. I've been working for the village for coming up on 2 years now. Strong passion in all things environmental. I'm a plant nerd. So, you know, part of my role with the village of Algonquin is to manage our 800 acres of green infrastructure. Includes everything from stream restorations, the village owns multiple detention basins, as well as managing our formal parks and formal plantings in town. But as far as this commission is concerned, you know, the green infrastructure is really where my passion is at. Prior to my time with the village of Algonquin, I was a private contractor with a few different companies focusing primarily on ecological restoration, habitat restoration, stream restoration, that sort of thing. And you know, prior to that, experience, my degree is in environmental science, which is kind of a mix of chemistry, biology, agronomy, a whole lot of those hard science-based courses. So lots of experience in the field, working with multiple municipalities over the years, And now working for a municipality, I'm getting to see what it's like on the other side of the table.
Okay. Anybody have any questions they'd like to ask? All right.
Have you been to a stormwater meeting before or familiar with what?
I've been to 3 of the TAC meetings. This is my first time at a Stormwater Commission meeting.
In the tech committees, you were there just as an observer or part of?
Just observer, yeah, just member of the public.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I've got one. What, you've observed a little bit on the tech. Okay. What are some of the things you'd like to see improved? What are some of the things you like about what this tech committee does? And what are some of the things you'd like to see improvements on that we could go toward?
Yeah, good question. So, you know, one of the things I really like, especially with the TAC, is the mix of experience. You have everybody from, you know, agricultural experience, municipal experience, private sector, a lot of engineering, strong engineering presence on the technical advisory committee. One of the discussions and something that we face at the municipal level in Algonquin is the enforcement side of any stormwater ordinance. You know, having it written down is great, but if there's no teeth or no way to hold people accountable to get action, there's no point in having an ordinance. So getting into the nitty-gritty of when the rubber hits the road, how do you get the parties to comply with the ordinance as intended? For me, that's probably the crux and the most interesting part, because I've been both on the private side, somebody who has to comply with that, so somebody trying to enforce it, and then now on the municipal side, trying to get our contractors or people who are working within the village to comply to that. And, you know, it's really, that's the crux of it, is the enforcement side of it. So that's the thing that's really, we've had some good conversations in the TAC about enforcement, enforceability, and that's probably the part that's interested me the most.
So is there something we can do better on the enforcement side?
I think there are things that we can do better, you know, and I think the TAC has been working through, you know, some of the language and really kind of thinking through. It's kind of, you know, play devil's advocate, you know, hey, what about looking at it from this viewpoint or from this angle? And I think, you know, continuing that discussion is really important and helpful.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? All right, well, thank you, and I know if Tyler comes, we'll have Tyler, and then we'll make a decision here. We'll wait a little bit for Tyler since we moving along here. So we want to move down into, while we're waiting for Tyler, I haven't seen him walk in. Can somebody check, see if he's out in the hallway?
Has anybody talked to him?
He said he was coming. He called me and asked me.
He did send me an email as well to confirm, so I haven't received anything that there's a change in his schedule.
Okay, well, if it's okay for everybody, if while we're waiting for Tyler,
There's nobody coming in, and I don't see any new vehicles, nobody out in the parking lot.
Absolutely, let's move forward now.
all right, so let's move forward to the discussion items, the Wetland Restoration Fund.
Yeah, so what the intent of this was, it stemmed from a phone call, and I included in the packet for everyone just the full information on our Wetland Restoration Fund, so everybody had a chance to read it. Really what it's for is basically for the mitigation of wetlands, to give the applicants another avenue for that. They would pay into our fund, and when we reach a certain threshold in terms of money available in the fund, we would send out requests for proposals for different projects, and those would get reviewed and all of that. So one of the items is the fee in lieu structure, which is the table and I'll pull it up here on the screen, which shows the different watersheds that have been designated. So it's this table here, Exhibit A, in the upper left. And these different watershed boundaries were provided in this map. So the idea is if you have a project here in the West Nipperson Creek watershed and you need to mitigate, depending on the acreage of that mitigation, these are the fees that that person would be paying.
Make one clarification.
Yes, go ahead.
So the applicant can only do the fee in lieu of if there's not an existing wetland mitigation bank in place within that watershed. If there is an existing wetland mitigation bank where a private developer has created a wetland specifically to sell credits out of, then that's where that goes. But if there is no bank within that watershed, then they can have the option of paying into the county's fee in lieu of program. And so it does provide them another avenue in order to comply with the county stormwater management ordinance and mitigate those wetlands in the county.
So the reason I was bringing this up is, and I don't remember the date, I want to say this is roughly from 2013. I had a phone call from some type of wetlands or type contractor who was asking me specifically about the Nipperson Creek values, and that discussion led to the realization that the Army Corps, for similar type mitigation bank in the area, they were looking at roughly $120,000 per acre. So the reason I wanted to bring this to your attention is that potentially these values from 2013, they're probably no longer valid, and if we're trying to mitigate based on these, we might not be actually having the right amount of money to make certain projects viable based on these values. So that was the first thing, was just an introduction to this, to highlight that maybe this is something that we would want to look at. And then also additionally, one other component to this in the ordinance, one of the comments that I've received from a couple of communities is the fact that the Wetland Restoration Fund, if it's in an incorporated community, those dollars come into the county. And so through the county's procedure, what they would be afraid of is potentially that the money that they would be seeing might not stay in their community. So if they're looking to potentially mitigate a wetland within their community, if the contractor or the applicant goes through this process to go through the county's restoration fund and we release it, again, it's going to depend on the type of projects that come back, but the type of projects that come back might not hit that community potentially. So that's another little caveat I would like to just throw out there. One of our municipalities, Algonquin, specifically mentioned that the reason they don't go with our ordinance is because if there is a wetland area that would be mitigated within their community, they would like to see that those dollars come back and go towards a green infrastructure project or something back into Algonquin. And the way that the Wetland Restoration Fund works, they don't necessarily have that control. So it's kind of a two-point item that I wanted to bring up to the committee for discussion.
Does it stay within the watershed, the ones that provide the wetlands, does it stay within a particular watershed? Like, to answer Algonquin's question, or does it, like, the Kishwaukee, could you use it up at the Nipperson Creek?
That would be the idea, if possible. But obviously, when we get this pot of money and we release it for projects, it depends. If there's no projects proposed in those areas, then it's kind of a rock and a hard place, right? Where we do want that money to stay local and have an impact to that community. So in Algonquin's eyes, yes, but if that doesn't happen, they prefer to have control and say, okay, well, we've got this great green infrastructure corridor that we've identified that we can naturalize, provide some habitat, et cetera, that could potentially provide the same benefit. So they went towards the Kane County ordinance because the Kane County ordinance does give the municipalities a little bit more control in terms of that mitigation within the incorporated boundaries.
Okay. So I can understand their thoughts there. Everybody else here, what's your thought on these fees? Do we need to look at them, or?
I think we should look at them. I mean, the price of everything's going up, and if this was done, I think you said 2018?
I want to say
Was it
2013.
2013? I mean, I'm sure the price of a wetland credit at one of the existing wetland banks is probably a lot more. So I think they certainly should be evaluated, and I think the list of wetland banks should probably be evaluated too to see what ones are still open. Maybe there's new ones, just to update that section.
The concern is the developers, if they actually invest capital to create a wetland bank up front and then have to bring that up to certain standards. And, but if they're selling it for $100,000 and we're providing fee in lieu of at $50,000, we're undercutting their capital investment. We're undercutting their ability to compete. And so the wetland mitigation bankers, this is a big issue with them. So I think the idea would be to bring our fee in lieu of structure in line with existing mitigation bank credits, what they're charging for. And typically, they'll charge a certain amount for uncertified credits. So they've created a wetland bank and it hasn't met the performance standards that they've set for it yet, but they can still sell credits out of that. Once they've met the performance standards, then they can actually charge a premium and mitigate at a lower ratio. And so the idea would be just make sure that our fee in lieu of structure provides, is equitable with existing wetland mitigation banks. And I do know that the McHenry County Conservation District has created one wetland mitigation bank. It's off of Route 31, just east of Glacial Park, and they're getting ready to create another one. So I think, once again, we would want to make sure that our rate structure is compatible with both the Conservation District banks and any private banks that are in the area.
The Conservation District is how much?
I don't know what they're charging. I don't know. But that's just an example of an existing wetland mitigation bank, and they're getting ready to invest capital to create another bank. And so we would want to make sure that our structure is in line with any of the Conservation District's banks or any private banks that are in the area.
And I don't know this answer. I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Does the state of Illinois, like when they're doing 47 and 31, do they have to pay into that?
They have to do mitigation. And so I know with like the Route 31 expansion or existing or past Route 31 expansion projects, they impacted wetlands as part of that and had to pay into, depends on whether it's Army Corps of Engineers jurisdiction or private jurisdiction, but they do have to pay into it. I oversaw a wetland mitigation bank in Orland Park that was a tollway project, and we had to do hundreds of acres of mitigation for past impacts. So yes, they do.
I can see 47 will be a large.
Yeah, quite possibly. Now, it's, once again, if it's an Army Corps of Engineers jurisdiction, then they have a higher mitigation hierarchy. So they have to try and avoid the wetlands. If they can't avoid them, they have to try and reduce the impacts and then mitigate for any impacts. So mitigation is the last option, but they would then have to pay into a bank that is approved by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Our fee in lieu of structure is only for isolated wetlands, so wetlands that are not connected to waters of the U.S. and so are under the regulation and jurisdiction of the county.
And that number could have gone up with the recent rule changes limiting the Army Corps' jurisdiction. So we could have potentially more isolated wetlands now than we do Army Corps jurisdictional wetlands with that rule change.
Are you referring to the rule change that the state?
Well, it was the Supreme Court decision changed the way that the Army Corps of Engineers regulates wetlands. So any wetlands that are not under the Army Corps of Engineers jurisdiction fall under the jurisdiction of the county. And so if the Army Corps of Engineers is regulating finding fewer wetlands under their jurisdiction, that means the number of wetlands under our jurisdiction is going to increase.
Well, there's a bill out there with the state of Illinois, and I don't know if it went anywhere yet.
Yeah,
You guys are aware
I
of
don't
that,
think
right?
I don't think that would actually affect us because all collar counties around Chicago have stormwater management ordinances that regulate wetlands, in large part because any wetland that gets filled in, you lose that storage capacity for stormwater, and that means that stormwater is going to go someplace else. So it's important to protect the wetlands from a flood mitigation or flood reduction standpoint. But the state law would apply to areas that don't have stormwater management ordinances.
Have you read that?
What's that?
Have you read that proposal?
Well, that's been a big sticking point because throughout, like I said, all the collar counties around Chicago, that was mandated in the negotiation of developing that state regulation. At least that's my understanding, is that it explicitly excludes us.
Even if they pass, excludes our entire county.
From because we have our own stormwater management ordinance that regulates wetlands. That's my understanding.
Actually, I hope you're right.
No, that really was a major sticking point, so that's my understanding. If I learn anything else, I'll certainly bring that to everybody's attention. But that's my understanding, is that the collar counties around Chicago, because we have existing ordinances that are probably stronger than what the state would be able to come up with anyway, that we would be exempt from that because we have protections in place. And then I did also want to clarify the Village of Algonquin, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way the Kane County ordinance is written is they do provide some flexibility. So if a municipality has an opportunity to fund a wetland restoration project, some type of restoration project using mitigation funds, they have the ability to allow mitigation as opposed to a fee in lieu of. So it just provides a little bit more flexibility. Most municipalities aren't going to have that level of expertise, I don't think, but the idea would be to provide some flexibility so that if a municipality does have a project that's identified, like in a watershed plan, to do a project that would create wetlands, that would provide a funding source to accomplish that. The way our fee in lieu of program works is, I think right now, once it gets up to $90,000, once it reaches that threshold,
I think it's 75.
What was it?
I think it's 75.
It says 75. But once it reaches that threshold, you guys can say, go ahead and release it, and then we would put out a request for proposals, and then people would then submit proposals to fund projects that would create wetland. And
What's the current balance of that right now?
I'd have to check, but I think it's like in the teens, like maybe
Remember, it was
12
kind of low.
to
We
16
had
or
dispersed
something.
it before.
I don't think we've had any payments since, I think the last project was around 2020 that we
Something
had
like
funding released, 2019. I don't think we've had payment back into the fund since releasing money we've had 2 projects released under the Wetland Restoration Fund.
Right. Larry?
I think that's reasonable what they're saying. We should collect data from the counties around us, from any other private watershed banks, and get a suggestion from you guys of what it should be and whether we should be raising that threshold then. If we're raising the dollars going into it, that seems reasonable that that threshold should be raised quite a bit.
And should we raise the 75,000 limit also?
Yeah, that's the threshold.
That's the threshold, okay.
Yeah.
Well, would you want to raise it or lower it? Because
So you can use it faster, lower it?
yeah, if you lower it, you would use it faster.
But if you raise these rates, there's going to be a lot more money coming into it, right?
Correct. Potentially, if it depends on development and whether or not, they're going to be mitigating for wetlands.
Okay, and then maybe leaving that the same is adequate from that point of view, sure.
I don't see any benefit of lowering it. Typically we want to fund larger projects. They have greater potential for success than small little pocket areas. So I think, and then, you know, anytime we do this, you know, there's a fair amount of work that goes into it. So I think a $75,000 threshold, $90,000 threshold is fine. You guys have the ability to say, you know, let it grow or release it at that point. So I don't see any benefit in lowering that. It's really just making sure that the rates that we're charging are equitable with the private sector or the wetland mitigation banks that are in the area, what they're charging, so that we're not undercutting them. Because if we undercut them, they are likely to pursue legal avenues for getting that equity.
Yeah, and that all sounds reasonable, but without the data, I don't know what to suggest, or even a suggestion from you guys would be good. Otherwise, we're sort of spinning our wheels on this. Good idea to review it, probably a good idea to change it.
So for our next meeting, we could put it on the agenda, give you that time, that gives you 60 days to go out and find those numbers, and we could put it on the agenda for discussion and possible action. If we chose that we had enough information to make a decision, we could do it and then put it forward to the board. I think it goes to P and D first and then to the board.
I mean, that sounds reasonable to me to do it that way, because right now I don't have the data to make a good decision, I guess.
Right. I think it was just to get this discussion going and get authorization from you to do further investigation.
So does anybody object to that, to doing that situation, having them go and come back with a number the next meeting? Perfect. All right, so will be it. Let's do it. Okay, next revise.
Jim, I have a suggestion, if you don't mind.
Larry?
I have no idea what happened to Tyler Wilkie, but it seems like Brad is waiting for our deliberation.
I just saw a text, he got hung up over at his court call and he's on his way over.
Okay. Otherwise, I was gonna say.
He said he should be here around 9 o'clock.
Okay.
So, I just saw that. And there's Mr. Reiner joining us at the meeting.
Good morning.
Good morning, John. So, let's go on to the 7.2, revised bulletin 75 detention volume versus curb number.
Yeah, this should be relatively quick. What this chart is essentially showing is what this is essentially showing is for stormwater detention. It allows engineers to use this chart to do a quick calculation for the amount of detention volume they would need. We have a similar chart in our SMO currently. That essentially is based on older bulletin 70 data. So this would be something that updates to the current rainfall intensity standards is really what it's looking to do. It went through the TAC. It's actually the same that Lake County adopted themselves. So it's really just updating our chart and our SMO to the updated rainfall intensity values. And I do want to point out that those rainfall intensity values are reflected accurately in the appendix before. So what you're seeing here, excuse me, right here is the updated rainfall values that engineers would use in their different analysis for stormwater calculations, which contradicts that graph because the graph is referencing the older data. So it's really just updating that graph so that now we have consistency. So that's really all it is just to bring that forward.
Okay, Chris?
I think that's great because I've been waiting for this for a while, but I think the only suggestion I would have, recommendation, is maybe just put a note on the chart, just indicating what the intensity is for the 100 years, so everybody knows that, hey, this is the updated chart, not the old one, just in case, you know, you get some developer going, well, here's the chart, it's like, well, no, that's the old rainfall data.
So just elevate, let it bolded or highlighted in some way.
Just something, and whether you reference the bulletin 75, maybe that's all you need to do, just based on bulletin 75 instead of bulletin 70, just so it's very clear. That's all.
Okay, would you
We need
guys?
an action on this though, because we don't have it as for action.
Well,
We have to adopt that?
because this would be an SMO amendment, so the SMO would get amended. So I did want to have you guys, I didn't want to move forward with amending the graph without the committee's approval. So considering Chris had the revision for putting the intensities on this graph, we can go ahead and do that. And then this would be something that we can have ready to be amended.
When we do amendments.
Yes, when we do amendments. Because the idea with some of these amendments is I would like to obviously do it in one batch if we can. So as the TAC finalizes some of these, I would like to get approval and put it kind of in a waiting pattern so that once we've figured out all of the amendments we want to do, we can go through it instead of having to go back and reference all of these and get approval at that time. But your decision on how you want to do that.
Any objection to doing that?
Makes sense to me.
Makes sense, it's a lot easier.
Go ahead. All right, I see Mr. Wilkie entered into the room, and we'll call him forward for his interview. Tyler, you want to?
Your word for it?
Yes, please.
Yep.
Thank you. I apologize, I thought I hit 9 o'clock, I did an 8:30 court appearance and then realized it was an 8:30 start, so I apologize
All
for
right,
that.
all right, so just tell us about yourself and why you want to be on this commission and a little bit, we all got
Appreciate
your,
My name's Tyler Wilkie, I'm an attorney from Crystal Lake, I live in Harvard and we farm. My background is in agricultural law with specialty in drainage. So I deal with drainage and a compliance side in the state drainage code. So when the opportunity arose that there was an opening on the TAC, I thought it would be a good opportunity. I deal with a lot of farmers that end up having to try and figure out where their compliance is within the stormwater management ordinance. For that reason, I'd ask for your consideration in being on the TAC.
okay? Any questions?
Sure.
Larry?
Have you been going to the TAC meetings or participating?
I've been to one of them that was held this year, and then I think we got bumped.
And maybe this is more for staff. Is there an attorney on the TAC board now?
There is not.
There was.
I know, Larry, you like the list of kind of the breakdown of the different agencies, so I'll throw that up there for you. But I can pull up the list of the TAC members as well if you want to.
No, if there's not an attorney, it's fine.
Unless one of those people was a former attorney and has experience in their current roles, no.
Okay. Tyler, with your experience with, anybody else want to ask any questions here? I'll just follow up the same question that I asked before. With your experience with dealing with the tech committee and stormwater ordinances here in the county, what do you see as lacking for those in our ordinance and things, in other words, things we could improve on? And what do you like about our ordinance?
So the thing I like is also the thing that I don't like. Our ordinance is very specific when you drill down, right? So we do a lot of zoning work and development work. When you're doing that kind of work, the stormwater ordinance makes a lot of sense. You can drill down, I know what the developer has to do and perform in order to make that happen. So that's specificity. When I'm east of 47, great. West of 47, when we get out into the agricultural lands, there's the way that the stormwater ordinance reads, out of that 180-page document, I use about 3 pages for farms because I'm exempt and I drill down and then you gotta go to the end. And so the problem is that my farmers end up doing work going, well, I think that I'm good because I go here and here. And then it's been our experience that, well, okay, you've got a violation. Okay, well, why? So we're dealing with federal agency, state agency, and then county, and trying to meld those together. So that clarification on what is exempt and what is not, and what is maintenance, and what is within county's jurisdiction, what's federal jurisdiction, I think that's where the clarity needs to come in the discussions that I've had with clients and members in that community, so.
Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you, Tyler, for coming today, and we'll deliberate and
Thank you, I appreciate your time. Thanks for.
thank you guys for
Good
coming.
to see you, thanks, Doc.
Thank
Good to see you. Thank you.
All right, so let's
So did you clarify something for me, once again, I know I think we talked about this at the last time, but we deliberate, but it's your appointment.
It is, but I certainly think it's appropriate to hear all of your opinions and take those into account in that.
Can you put the curve ups up there?
Yes, I can.
But let's go into this, some discussion of each of them before we make any selection or recommendation. If anybody has to have or wants a discussion. And this appointment is fulfilling, it expires here just at the end of the year. So there'll be a whole nother set of appointments this fall.
Correct. You can see there, what is that, about 8 or 7 in that 2024.
Who would he be replacing? He meaning either of these two?
So that's 8 that would expire in 2024. So we need to reselect 8 members for the following year.
And that's just a blank one on the bottom.
And the blank one on the bottom is currently, we don't have anybody acting in that role. So if you, both of either Brad or Tyler, whoever you select, they would actually have, starting today until December. So they would be acting a little bit less than the current 2024 members that we elected earlier in January.
And our other 24 members are still all active on there. There's not 2 positions possibly. They're all there?
There is not. I am looking at the city of McHenry, however, because I think I haven't seen them coming in recently. So I was going to go through and confirm that they actually have missed the last 3 or 4, just to see what's going on, because in the bylaws that would at that point, missing that many without some kind of reasoning would give you the ability, if you wanted to vacate that position and appoint someone else.
We could appoint 2 then.
You could appoint 2 at that, yes.
Does being from Algonquin satisfy that? Do we have to have from specific areas? I know some of our appointments have to be from specific areas. I wanted to clarify that.
We discussed this last time. There is no specific qualification that requires the member to be living or residing within the county or a member of a municipality or anything like that. Case in point would have been if we wanted to keep someone from Army Corps or IEPA on. Obviously, those individuals, their offices are mostly in the Chicago area, so that would be an example of them not really being involved in the community other than from a regulatory purpose.
Okay, so before we kind of decide or open that discussion, I'd like to charge you with contacting the city of McHenry to make sure they're interested or not interested. And if they're interested, they have to be here the next meeting. I think I can honestly say that, because then they'll have missed so many meetings that they would be removed.
Because those would be ones that would expire in 2024 that would still need to be on.
Surprised that they wouldn't want to.
I know, and that's only fair to give them that choice. To come to the
If
next
it's any fair, does everybody get an email on these meetings? I didn't get an email for this morning's meeting. I know it's on the county calendar, but is it possible they're not getting an email? Because it happened to me today.
So we sent a calendar invite, but we have not been sending like.
You know, like Kathy
2-week.
Bowes or somebody always sends us an email 3 days before
We can
with the
certainly do
agenda.
that.
The one thing that was a little confusing, it showed a canceled, on my calendar came up canceled, and then a new meeting.
Now, I'm not sticking up for them, but I mean, it might help to get an agenda 3 or 4 days before what's gonna be posted, just as a friendly.
I think that's a good idea. We will start to do that.
And then also follow up with them too and say, hey, have you lost your appetite,
Well, that's exactly.
I was planning on doing
Be
that.
smart.
So, because I
Because
didn't
if they
know.
say they want to be on it, they have to be at that next meeting.
Yeah.
Being that they've already missed the amount that would remove them. So, but you can't blame them on that either, for the fact that a lot of meetings got canceled. But if they have the intention that they want on it, I can't argue with that either, so. I just wanted to ask that question before we started deliberating. Okay, let's move into this discussing what anybody thinks or preferences or whatever. We have both candidates and they certainly are both qualified. So.
We certainly have enough engineers on there and consultants.
I think it's rare that you would get an attorney, especially with the background of somebody with ag law and drainage law, which is critical for enforcement of the ordinance and communicating it to these other entities out there.
Okay.
All my experience, I've always longed to have an attorney that would be readily available to ask some of these questions. So I think Tyler would be a good pick.
Yeah, I agree.
From the list, there's no one from the Harvard area, right?
Yes, there, oh, no.
Mike Von Bergen's from Hebron.
Yeah, he's Hebron.
That would be the only
Harvard,
one.
no,
Yeah, so no, there isn't anybody over there.
So hitting two subjects, attorney and out in the area where the dirt is.
Okay. Abigail, do you have any input?
I agree with the first comments that the lawyer would be beneficial to help make sure we can enforce it.
Okay, Mike?
Agreed.
I think while both candidates are really qualified, I feel that having an attorney's perspective, is if we're, with the ordinance being a regulatory type thing, trying to enforce and things like that, I think having that perspective of what would be enforceable and how would that be upheld in a court of law, I think having that perspective would benefit the ordinance, so we don't find ourselves with an ordinance that we have all these rules and regulations that at the end of the day, we can't really enforce or follow up on it at the back end, so.
I do just.
You already said yours, but.
I do just want to clarify any amendments that we would push forward. I would run through the state's attorney before we actually.
And obviously you have to do that.
Right, so
You have
just.
to protect the county.
But I guess on the flip side, I'm just saying that, if he's representing farmers in a court too, it'd be good to hear that side of it as well, so I agree. I mean, I'm sure it's all checked by legal and everything, but I think it's good to have that side of it and that point of view.
It'd be less wasted time.
That's where I was gonna go.
How about you? You agree with everybody?
Yeah.
John?
Well, yeah, I totally concur, but and in respect to Bradley, with everything coming up, you have 8. I mean, can we put him on the short list, or is there, do we know, I mean, there's no way you can vote for 2 or.
If McHenry were to give us that answer immediately or quickly, I would bring them both forward. I mean, these 2 candidates are probably the best 2 that we've seen.
I agree with that.
I really enjoyed.
I mean,
both of them.
can we at least give them a nudge for, like, we'd like to hold you for our next opening, so we don't lose them?
Well, yeah, he's sitting right here.
Oh, yeah. mean, certainly, if we did go with Tyler today, I mean, would you, you're not gonna leave Matt, are you, and take your choice?
I'll probably still attend the TAC as a member of the.
That's awesome.
And
I
don't
mean,
call him Bradley.
You missed that part.
Don't look at the mole.
Moly, moly, moly.
All right, Tracy.
I mean, I would like to see, both candidates. But I really think it is important to have somebody with Tyler's credentials.
Okay,
Everybody said it, I mean, it's,
okay.
yeah, Tyler's been in the business, I assume that there are times when our state's attorneys call him
Well, I guess
for advice, so.
I guess I really like both candidates, so.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you guys put that input the way you did. And I'm gonna wait to hear about McHenry though. And I'm hoping that, give them a deadline. Say, respond by Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever. Give them a deadline. Tell them make a decision, get on it.
So Jen, just, as it's your appointment, and we're just talking about this, what you're saying is if McHenry doesn't
I'll appoint both of
participate,
them.
you'll appoint both, okay.
Absolutely. Let's get the positions filled so that we can move forward. We got a lot of stuff on this tech committee that needs to go through. So everybody kind of, I don't think anybody would be opposed to me on that, would you? So, okay.
I'll send the email as soon as we're done, and I'll give them till the end of next week.
And be sure to tell them they have to have a representative at that next meeting. So what is that next meeting?
The 9th, I think.
The 9th of June?
Let me, 11th, sorry.
11th of June. Okay, so you gotta give me time to make the appointment then. That's gotta go through the county board, but they can still attend it though. So, okay. It's in the county board official. Remember if we did that last time? I said we didn't make that official, it just came through my appointment, didn't it?
The bylaws just say that, yeah, it is your choice.
Okay.
It is your choice, so
All right,
that's
well
how
then we
you
can have a
decide.
full tech commission
Yes.
if they do that.
Yes. Well, I mean,
Either way, we will.
we've pretty much had every other member, I want to say, if not them, their alternate showing up. So we haven't had any issues with the quorum, or at least enough representation to get a lot of good ideas forward. So.
Okay. All right then, let's move on. I'll make that decision then with it as soon as you hear from McHenry. Thank you for coming, by the way. All right, so let's move back down to, and I know Carl's got to leave, so whenever you have to leave, it's okay.
We're at 7-3 now, right?
Yep, we're at 7-3.
All right, I'm just gonna pull it up on this.
Revision of language adding paragraph 4, article 4, section F, permit conditions.
So this is something that went through the TAC as well. So just to give you a little bit of an idea what this is about, it is coming from our section in the ordinance that describes the permit conditions. And specifically, with every permit, we release a set of permit conditions that you see here. This was something that has been long established, I think before even Joanna, or maybe when she first came on board. So a lot of these items, you'll see here special conditions highlighted. And that's the first item here is this special condition. Everything else, and you'll see a couple of other ones here, but everything else is really in here is pulling from some part of the ordinance, whether it's a performance standard or some type of requirement. The only one that I had a hard time with was this statement here, number 11, that we released permits, which has to do with certificate of occupancies and completion of the project. We tend to have a lot of single-family residence developments that come in that get close, that want to get temporary occupancy or final occupancy. And we have a application form that lists some of the requirements, but it's not really anchored anywhere to the ordinance. And so we tend to have a lot of back and forth with these developers, and really I'll go back to the SMO here. We just don't have anything that signals when a project really is considered completed. And that was the reason behind trying to add here a fourth item that really discusses and provides clarity to have an understanding of when that will occur.
What page are you on
This would be page 20 of your packet.
20.
I don't know if the packet is numbered.
It is. It's page 20 of 32.
Okay, awesome. I learned something.
Yeah, this is what's in your agenda is the attachment right there.
Correct.
That's what's up there now.
So everything that you're seeing in black is essentially what was in the ordinance. The red would be the edits. So item number 4 is a complete new addition. And then also we're looking to revise the definition for final grading slightly to provide a little bit more clarity there as well. And hopefully this will help minimize our issue. I spend a lot of time on the phone with developers, walking them through this process. We get pushback, show me where it says I have to have it in this condition or that condition. So this is just meant to help provide that clarification. Tyler kind of spoke to some of, another item of looking to have more clarification in the ordinance. This is an attempt to do that. And we tried to do it in a way that would also not hinder municipalities' ability when they want to issue their certificates as they see fit. So we didn't want the stormwater to bleed into any kind of zoning requirements that the municipalities might have.
This might give clarification as well as ease of the enforcement then. The way I see it, if it's clear in black and white.
Yeah, what happens is my building division usually puts together the temporary certificate of occupancy or the certificate of occupancy. And they've come to me many times saying, hey, where is the language that I can reference that we can fit into this to have that teeth? And a lot of the times it's actually a very small component in the building code, I don't know if it's the IRC or whatever, that really says that all other requirements must be fulfilled on a project. And that's really what's been tying it together. And so you can see when they provide this on the temporary occupancy, well, okay, what are these requirements? And now it's a way to point to it directly in the ordinance and have that language spelled out. And this is really, it's not deviating from anything that we've done in the past. It's not deviating from what other municipalities would consider complete. It's staying within that kind of same avenue. It's just now providing the language and clarity in the ordinance.
So, but a blanket is enough stabilization to get them an occupancy?
They may not even need it. The reason
right, if it's flat or
right, if it's flat, sometimes these temporary occupancies come in right before winter. And if they throw seed down, that could wash away, so the blanket helps hold it in place. So that's why we try to add that language of as applicable. Because if it's flat and they've just seeded it right now and there's obviously very little concern or need for a blanket, and I certainly don't want to add additional cost to a project if it's not warranted. But it would then also say, well, you've got this steep slope on the edge of your property that drains down to a creek. Maybe that's a little bit more critical of an area.
Yep.
So,
but is it the builder or the developer's onus to make sure that he's done with you, or is that something when they call the county for, when it's in the county at least, when they call the county for final inspections, will the county flag you or does the builder have to flag, right?
We
You understand what I'm asking?
We get a little bit of both. It depends if the developer is sometimes the contractor and the owner, because they go and they start buying subdivision lots to buy and sell. So that's a scenario where the developer is the owner, so everything is on them. We do have situations where the onus might be on the owner because they want to do their own landscaping. They have a preferred method of.
No, fair enough, but when he builds and he calls for that final, who does he have to call? Does he have to just call P and D and then you get flagged?
Yes.
Right, Stormwater gets flagged for that?
Exactly, and usually it's through our building division, because now they are at the point where a lot of the life safety issues with the home have been completed. Maybe there's final touch-up stuff, and we've had trainings with them specifically to be able to communicate with the developer, even early on in the process. Hey, if you're gonna wanna get your temporary, you are gonna need to get your final grading done and those type of items. So we do try to be proactive, even if the inspection is electrical inspection, let's say, to just kind of reiterate that process with the.
This is where we had that problem a few years ago with, Joanne going back to CO'd homes that were 5 years old and fining them hundreds of dollars for not getting stormwater taken care of.
Which so I think that was before me as well, and as I understand it, that was more to do so with incorporated areas where the municipalities did not instruct the applicants to go get stormwater permits with us because they're non-certified communities, which we don't have a lot of those, but those do come up. So I think that was part of the problem there, was that we just didn't have any stormwater.
Is there a mechanism now for that?
Well, we reach out to the communities. We try to have that educational component to constantly remind them to, hey, make sure you come to us. So I have seen a better job from them. But to be honest, I mean, we can only take it as far as we can because it's really up to them. If they receive a building permit application, there's no way we would be able to know about it. The village would have to have something within their process that signals to that applicant to make sure that they talk to us. They have been doing a good job. I don't think I've seen any issues myself where potentially there was a miss. I'll say this, it does happen. We're all human. There's gonna be one or two that potentially and it might not even be a single family residence. It could just be like a detached garage or a deck or something that ends up being in a flood hazard area, maybe too close to a wetland, et cetera. It will still happen from time to time. I don't think we can officially eliminate that from happening because the responsibility does fall on those communities. Again, it's their boundaries, it's their jurisdiction.
There was one other thing I saw in Redline, and I can't find it here now. Do they need when they're going in for their permitting, let's say in the county, do they need a topo survey with a final grading plan also?
We typically request that. However, it is a case by case. Most of the time, if it's a single family residence, they're gonna need that regardless because you also have the septic system component. You almost can't do a septic design without that topo. But let's say it's something, and then in that case, the certificate of
Do they need an
occupancy.
as-built after that now, or you haven't changed that?
Have not, but it could be a special condition depending on
The severity?
the severity of it. We have had issues with homeowners exceeding the parameters of their issued permits to the point where potentially it could be critical in certain areas, and homeowners adjacent to them are, calling with potential complaints and things like that. And so then, depending on how much work they've done outside of their permit, I may ask for an as-built, and it's something that I try to communicate with the homeowner and the developer and just say, you went in an area you really weren't supposed to go in, and you potentially flattened this out. That could be affecting the drainage now. I don't know if it works. So either provide me an as-built to indicate that it still works, or something to show me how you've changed.
But not in every case.
No,
right?
very rarely,
Yeah.
very, very rarely, and upfront, we don't require it.
Yeah, because personally, I'm a little sensitive to that, because we're trying to make affordable, houses that, everybody can afford, right? But that's a $2,000 onus on that homeowner. So if it's not necessary, you hate to see it. So I'm glad to hear that you're not imposing that.
Even in situations where they might be next to the river, where now they're doing some compensatory storage, they can still go to a ratio of 1 to 1.5 and not require the as-built. If they're okay, I suggest that if they want to save some money. Otherwise, if they really want to nail it, they can bring that ratio down to 1.2 to 1, but it does require that as-built topo. So even there, we are providing some flexibility in more critical areas. But every project is its own thing, and it's a case-by-case basis, really, is what I would say to that. But up front, unless you're requiring compensatory storage, we still leave that option open. What ratio do you want to be, do you want to meet the 1.5, which would exclude the as-built, or the 1.2, which would include the as-built? And so we don't force anybody into either. We leave that up to them, the applicant, if it's the homeowner, and their developer, their engineer, to make those decisions.
Great, thanks. That's all. Sorry.
Anybody else? On this one? Okay. So your intention then on these, you're going to accumulate changes and then bring them all forward at the same time as the tech goes through them, and then hit the board all at once with them?
I think I was going to take a page out of just having the ones that you have approved before as kind of a batch under a general. I can't remember what the county board uses for the ones that are just have been approved and just go straight through. But I would put them under a separate category of these ones have been approved previously, so they'll be there as a reminder. And if anybody, and then you guys can go ahead and approve them as 8, 9, 10 items, however we have. But it would give anyone the ability to potentially pull one again for discussion or remove it from like a common consent batch, if you will.
Okay.
But if you want to do a different process, again, just let me know and we can set up the
I'm
agenda.
okay with that, because I think P&E do the same way.
And I think it's easier for certified communities to do them several at one time, because if you do one at a time, county board approves it, then each certified community has to go through and take it for an approval. And then if you come back with another one, we're always going to be, every meeting, taking one. So I'd rather just do several at once.
Exactly. Okay. We're all in agreement on that.
It's a waste of time.
So you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, and I will mention, as I also put these to the state's attorneys, if they have comments or they point something out that's a difficulty, et cetera, I'll bring it back for your attention.
Okay.
Okay, so the next one here. This one also went through the TAC where they voted on it and said that they liked these changes. So again, I'll just pull up the section in the ordinance in case we have to reference it. But this is coming from Article 6, which gets to the performance standards. And this is the area where it really starts to describe how things need to be done or in what manner they need to be done. And this focuses on the inspection and maintenance requirements. Something that a lot of the other counties have, and certainly we had in our ordinance, is the use, and you can see it actually down here in item C of the original ordinance, is the qualified inspector. What we wanted to do was give that a little bit more of a definition. And the way that our ordinance currently works is that qualified inspector really only comes on board for larger projects, so 1 acre developments or greater. And what we've found is that there could be smaller projects that cause a mess, for lack of a better word. And what we wanted to do was first establish what that McHenry County Qualified Inspector would look like, and this is mirroring our wetland specialist certification. So in the same way how the county has a list of certified wetland specialists, we'd like to have a list of certified McHenry County inspectors. And getting on that list I'll get into, but one of the items that we've added here for the inspection requirements is, again, trying to add a little bit more requirements for developments that are under the acre but might be in a flood hazard area, might be in a wetland, or might be 100 feet within a wetland or flood hazard area that might be critical. So that's what this first section C is designed to add. And then since I have it on the screen, you can see the section after that that's not being changed automatically had the information that, hey, you're going to need this qualified inspector for developments that are disturbing 1 acre or more. So this was the first major change, is providing this additional information to require a qualified inspector on projects that might be more critical. Which we feel that is, and a lot of this is tied back to the MS4 requirements that we gave a presentation on, that are the US EPA standards for monitoring our construction sites and keeping our water clean. Quite frankly, we have 3 inspectors, one that just does plumbing full-time, and then our staff, and then we rely on SWCD as an additional inspector. They would hit our 1 acre or higher developments. So at any given point, we have so many developments going on. When we have strong enough rains and things like that, there could be potential issues, and having a qualified inspector in some of those critical areas would help alleviate any potential for mishaps.
Is this the one, your last tech committee, they talked about this one in particular, didn't they?
Yeah, this one in particular.
This one stuck out to me that they had quite a bit of discussion on. Is that the one?
Well, they had discussion on both. I think this one was a little bit less because it's trying to follow Lake County and some of the other municipalities for defining qualified inspectors that have to produce these reports on a weekly basis or after a certain rainfall amount, which ties back to that MS4 requirement from the EPA that's handed down to us. So one of the difference, however, to some of the other counties, like Lake County, for example, they keep it at 1 acre. Kane County keeps it a little bit smaller, so everybody kind of has a little bit of a different flavor on when the qualified inspector is required.
That's what I thought there was quite a bit of discussion on
Right.
that acre.
One of the.
I thought a lot of them had wanted it to stay over an acre.
They did, and a lot of the concern was that are we now going to be burdening a lot of smaller developments, single family residents and those type of things. So one of the things that I had pointed out is that a lot of your deck permits and those type of permits, we issue under a general permit. If you're going, and the language here specifically exempts any regulated development authorized by a general permit. So it does remove the majority of those projects, electrical services, any of those type of smaller projects from needing this seawalls. Obviously, the category of projects with this sea element is, again, we're close to a river, a creek, a wetland. A lot of the times our general permits are designed for handling those type of smaller projects with specific requirements that are in accordance with Army Corps and IDNR. But when you get away, one of the examples that we discussed is a landscaping business that comes in that's not over an acre, but they're having outdoor storage of materials. And a lot of the times it's those concrete holding areas that are not covered, and potentially 200 feet away or whatever it is, or right adjacent to the site might be a creek.
Okay.
So it's trying to capture those areas to basically have that. Now, we have added the caveat that the enforcement officer could waive this requirement if there's already a buffer established, or the developer can show that there's a way that this potential pollutant or contaminant can't actually get to that specific area. So we've added that
That's a good
under.
point. I'm glad you added that in there.
Yeah, we added it here where the enforcement officer may waive this
waive it
requirement
if there's
if there's.
vegetation in between.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or if they already have an appropriate best management practice that's installed and being properly maintained.
That's good, because in some instances in the past, builders have had to put swaddles or, sill fences in for something that was totally in a contained area that just wasn't necessary. So I'm glad to see that in there.
So that's why, Jim, I think everybody kind of came back on board with liking the idea. We've had a couple of examples recently where we had a water main installation next to a established fen, a wetland area under Army Corps jurisdiction, where there wasn't proper erosion control, and it definitely was not going to be over an acre.
Sure.
But they were right on the border.
Yeah.
Yes, and so that would be a scenario where we would probably want to have somebody qualified checking that more regularly, because we just don't have the staff to be able to hit all of these different sites.
Okay. Anybody else on this one? Okay. Oh, Larry.
Yeah, the last line, the last page.
Yeah, I'll continue actually, if that's okay. I just kind of wanted to go by. Are you talking about this page, Larry, or the last line of the one we were looking at?
Up there.
I've got page 22.
I don't go by that.
Okay.
On page 3 of that particular. And I was just wondering about the certified by Lake County. Does Lake County have something we don't have?
That's on 23.
Yeah, so moving forward, it's just, there was no other additions other than at the end of this that I'll just kind of skip forward to Larry's point. Lake County does have their own program. You have to take an exam, you have to show up to trainings, and they do an annual seminar. And you have to show that you're qualified, that you're somehow involved in that type of business, a contractor, an engineer, etc. And we just simply wanted to say, the initial idea was for McHenry to potentially have something similar, but if we have all of these other programs established, then we just felt it was better that if you're already qualified under Lake County, we're gonna have that carry over into McHenry County, so someone doesn't have to feel like, oh, what were those requirements? Great, I need another certification. So we just didn't want to put any other thresholds or barriers to confuse developers to make it easier. And we also wanted to open it up to potentially other areas, maybe contractors that work more in Boone County on our west side that really wouldn't have Lake County certification, but maybe they're certified in one of these other organizations. Or just like the wetland certification, they can provide us the documentation saying, you know, I've been a contractor for 10 years. I've taken, you know, this program or this private organization, this webinar, this seminar, et cetera, and we can review that and just say, you know what, this is in line with what we want to see, and give them an opportunity to become certified for McHenry County. So really, it was just looking to borrow from everywhere else and say, if anybody else has a qualified program, then that's sufficient, and they can provide the documentation that they're certified in Lake County, so they would automatically receive certification with us. And Lake County calls their program the Designated Erosion Control Inspector, DECI, for those that might be familiar. And so if you're a DECI in Lake County, we would automatically accept you in McHenry County as well.
Would our inspectors be going to Lake County to do this? Take the seminars or?
Our inspectors? No, you don't have to be Lake County certified. You could be certified in any of these other programs, or show that you have the skill based on your qualifications or resume. It's very similar to the certified wetland specialist. You might have taken a different course here and there and still meet the requirements, but they're not all the same.
Okay, but I guess I'm a little confused, and this could be a contractor, anybody. I mean, our building inspectors right here that go out and inspect for McHenry County, are they gonna go to Lake County to get certified, or are they already certified, or?
No.
What am I missing?
They're not already certified. They can do the inspection. I think in this case, what we would look to do, because we already partner with SWCD to have them do our inspections, that they would be involved with some of these smaller projects. So the idea is our inspectors would still be doing the inspection, but there's now the requirement for that applicant to also hire a qualified inspector off the list.
Oh, okay.
Right, and if that contractor has someone that might meet those requirements, then they can submit that and get put on the list. If the owner, and the way we would do it is, if the owner also is like, I don't have anyone, it's a small project for whatever reason, maybe they need it, rare cases, we would potentially let them go through the same process that we do for SWCD, where SWCD does our inspections for 1 acre developments. We can say, okay, you can go hire SWCD to do that, at which point we're looking to update our fee structure so that we're not also double charging additional inspection fees. So in terms of fee and structure, that would stay the same, but there would be the added burden of potentially having to find a qualified individual. But a lot of these developers and contractors could already meet those requirements. In most cases, they are well-versed. And so we didn't want to, however, if someone isn't a DECI, but they know their stuff and they've taken, other private organization or other federally recognized, state recognized type exams or programs, that they would still be able to do that without having to go to Lake County or take additional steps.
Okay.
And Lake County is included. Lake County's had their programs in place for almost 20 years now. So many of the contractors throughout the region have already gone through the DECI program in Lake County, and so it's important for us to not double dip or place additional burdens on them. It's already an established program, but they can have any number of certifications. It's not limited to Lake County. But the vast majority of contractors in the area have already gone through the DECI program in Lake County, so it's important to recognize that.
So then is it B or C? Because the way I read that, it has to be B and C. Because I'm thinking, IDOT has soil erosion certification.
Yeah, so
I just want to make sure that if you're allowing something else other than the 3 listed in B by way of
Right,
C,
so that's why you would have to meet A, and then A says that you would need to meet B or C.
Okay.
That was some wordsmithing language we try to get correct so that.
So I have I guess a question. I know you said smaller projects, this would not come into play, but what type of larger projects are we talking about? Are we talking about a house, or like the complete area of disturbance is an acre?
Correct. So the single family residences are also covered under a general permit.
Okay.
The only time they're not is if they exceed an acre. The reason why that acre is important is the US EPA comes down and says you need to get a permit from us now because you're over an acre.
Okay.
And a lot of these requirements are already, you need to have a qualified inspector, you need to be doing these inspections. So that's why that exemption for general permitting will eliminate, like I said, a lot of the decks and things like that. And then the general permit number 2 is specific to single family residences, or really can be a multifamily, any type of residential type structure would be included in that outside of like your planned subdivision type components.
What about a small agriculture building?
So, agriculture building, depending on where it's at, if it's not near any of these components, you might not need the qualified inspector. And a lot of the times, if they're under 5,000 square feet, then they're automatically exempt. So it's a case-by-case basis, and we would certainly work with that farmer to indicate, hey, what if you pulled it back just a little bit? Like, does it have to be in that specific location that maybe is next to your stream or creek or whatever that might be meandering through the property? And in all honesty, most people probably don't want to be too close to those features to avoid it. So that's why we have this kind of exemption to that. And again, if there's enough, to John's point, if there's enough of a vegetated buffer or land in between, it's flat, we would certainly waive that requirement.
Okay.
For the farming community.
Anything else on that issue on this? Okay.
So just the last 2 points then, I and J, that we did add. Okay, these are specific, and this is actually a lot of language that was already in the ordinance, but essentially what we didn't have an opportunity to do was, if there ever was an issue, there was nothing in the ordinance that would really allow us to give a stop work order. And so item I there just really says that at any stage of the construction, the qualified inspector or the enforcement officer feels like there's been a control measure that's ineffective, that's not working, hasn't been installed, replaced, etc., that any further work is really going to damage a neighboring property or a creek, that we can put a stop work order until that is properly addressed. And then item J talks about really how that would happen. So if there is potentially an issue, a neighboring owner has now had a bunch of material dumped on their property due to the negligence of a contractor, or whatever it might be, that cleanup, we try to provide just some common ideas for consideration, which would be removal of the sediment and or debris, stabilizing eroded areas, replanting or reseeding native areas as designed by a certified wetland specialist, or replanting, reseeding, or sodding turf areas. These components were something that actually go into every maintenance plan. They're in there, hey, if you see debris, you remove it. So we weren't trying to reinvent the wheel because a lot of these are gray area. There is no one cleanup that could potentially be the same, but the ordinance really on the back end does have language for enforcement, but because there's no performance standard tied to it, there's really no way to get, it almost becomes a back and forth, and there's no way I can point to any particular component that says, well, you've dumped sediment onto a neighbor, you have to remove that, which in most cases would be common sense. So that's what I and Jay tried to do, is to put a stop work order in, and then also kind of give an idea of what that cleanup should involve. And we tried to get away from really providing specifics because it is difficult to do that with every site. But we've had enough examples come up where we just didn't have the ability to really have that contractor or that applicant comply in the manner that we were really looking for, that this is able to provide. So it's those two sections, and then like I said, we discussed this definition here for what a qualified inspector would be. The idea would be that we would be putting them on a list. The language is very similar to the wetland certification specialist list that we have, and if there's a potential person that we've deemed qualified that now maybe there's 2 or 3 projects where we feel that they're not doing an adequate job, then we can potentially remove them from that list. And Lake County has a similar process where you would potentially provide written notification to them that, hey, they have a decky that is not doing their duties.
I notice a lot of people walk in and out. Are we in conflict of another meeting coming up?
I am not aware that we are.
Check on their room.
Okay.
I think it's everybody just not sure, seeing people. Is this the one?
Okay. All right, keep going.
Okay, well, that was, if this is if no one has any other comments to this particular document, it's one I'll also send over to the state's attorney to kind of hold in our bank of future amendments.
Do we have any other ones that are already at the state's attorney from the previous?
No, I have none to the state's attorney. This one that we reviewed here and the previous one with that definition change for permit condition, those would be the first 2 I'd be sending over.
Okay.
We do have another one that I have. It's not under discussion items. It's under the reports because the TAC tabled that one for future discussion. But I at least wanted to present it to everyone in case you wanted to provide some early feedback.
Okay, let's move on then.
Okay.
So we're down to reports, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So
we have a couple people have to leave here until the letter.
All right, well, I'll keep it quick. So I provided the information, but the first report I wanted to provide was just the grant that we were awarded through FEMA. It's in coordination with the Illinois State Water Survey, and I'll pull up the map. You can see this blue area is the area of interest. All these little green dots that you see are structures identified in those areas. A lot of these structures are older homes built in the 50s and 60s. So the idea behind this study would be to do an analysis where it's really trying to assess the flood risk associated with these structures. And so there's kind of a twofold kind of prong of attack here or benefit from doing this is number one, we now have a well-defined benefit cost ratio to understanding what type of mitigation potentially these homes can undergo to make them more flood resilient, which then would make them ready for potential grant applications. We recently had one grant opportunity that unfortunately we weren't able to take advantage of because a lot of these, the timing of it is usually a 2 to 3 month period. And it was specifically related to receiving funding for making modifications to structures to make them more flood resilient. So this study is going to help us do that. And then number 2, it's going to help us identify vulnerable areas for our EMA team to understand where potentially we need to provide immediate assistance should we have some kind of flooding, disaster, et cetera, to understand some of the challenges behind potentially providing aid to some of the residents to these homes. So that's something that I'm currently waiting for the state's attorney to get back to me. We had gotten this resolution through the board in I think March or April, can't remember. And so now the Illinois State Water Survey had sent over their contract, so it's with the state's attorney to just take a look at that. So if nobody has any questions or comments on that, I'll leave it at that.
Larry?
The grant was to do the study?
Yes, sorry, the grant.
The dollar amount?
The grant dollar amount, I apologize.
That's fine.
It's around $70,000. There's zero commitment from the county. The 25% match is coming from the Illinois State Water Survey.
Okay. That's good.
Okay.
All right, and then the other item that is in the report, or Jim, I guess I'll let you.
No, go right ahead. Move on to the next one.
All right, 8.2 performance standards. This one, you guys have it. So really what I want to, you'll see there's an extensive rewrite here to the majority of it, a lot of red, a lot of new red. Really what this came down to was tying back to the idea of water quality with our projects and taking a look at what other counties do. We have a lack of post-construction requirements here. A lot of the infrastructure that potentially from a stormwater perspective gets implemented is for post-construction, best management control for any type of pollutants. One of the things that all the other counties do is they throw a strong threshold, an impervious number. If you're over that, then you have to provide this B&P, this water quality measure. We don't like that, or at least staff did not. So the way we approached it was to have it more be of a narrative for that developer, that applicant, to indicate what their project is going to involve and give them an opportunity to identify any potential pollutants. The issue with having a hardline impervious area is that if you have 2 projects that go over that threshold, one might be something where you do have cause for concern. Maybe it's a lot of vehicle traffic, a truck stop, but the other, it might be a gravel road out to a pole building for storing tractors. We didn't feel it appropriate to have both of them provide a BMP for that type of project. So this idea came about because applicants have to produce a stormwater pollution prevention plan for developments that are over an acre. That's during the construction, you're identifying what your activities are and then identifying any potential pollutant sources and how you're containing them during construction. This drives that to the post-construction, where the applicants can really give us the information to indicate what pollutants they might be looking at and how they're addressing them. All of it does have waiver components to it, especially with the agricultural community. But that was the idea behind this, is stepping up our game in anticipation of that MS4 permit with US EPA. And we're really trying to focus on total suspended solids, metals and oils, nutrients consisting of nitrogen and phosphorus. It's not limited to that. There could be other chemical storage, fuel, etc. And a lot of the times those have to go through like USDA for chemical storage, or for fuel, it has to go through another state agency where you automatically have to make sure that your container isn't going to be leaking, or you have to take those things into account. So they can take that documentation provided to us to show, hey, I'm meeting these other standards, that's how I'm taking care of it, that would meet this specific requirement. And so it removes it from a threshold perspective to more on what's going on at the property.
You said this is the one they kind of tabled for a while.
This is the one that they wanted to table because there was a lot of discussion.
Like the double fuel tanks, double wall tanks and everything.
There was general consensus that this is moving in the right direction, but they really wanted to focus on some of the specifics. And, you know, as you've observed, you know, a lot of our discussions are, you know, we want to make sure that what we're putting in is, you know, actually can be enforceable, that we're not putting restrictions on that just can't be taken care of. So it was more, I think, a language perspective, just making sure that the language is appropriate. But the general consensus, I think, is that this is moving in the right direction. And, you know, that you can agree if that's, or disagree if that's the consensus that we had. But I think we want to make sure that the wording was right, and that's why it was tabled.
Right.
Okay. And people had to leave, so.
Yeah, good point, good point.
But no, but everyone was really engaged in saying, oh, one more thing, so that's why, you know, we just moved into this area.
Okay. Now, anybody have any input on that one? After you saw and look at that, since we're gonna discuss it next week, or 2 weeks? Or let's let it go back and rework it and bring it back to us, okay?
Okay. Then lastly here, just a quick update. I sent this map out to everybody, something that we're moving forward with, our comprehensive stormwater management plan. We've now had a lot of discussions with different agencies, different stakeholders, and the IEPA basically gave us a green light to do our plan by trying to take our different watersheds. In this map, what you're seeing is different watersheds as defined by the USGS using their hydrologic kind of
hydrologic unit codes,
which looks at the kind of terrain and where things are draining. What we're looking to do is, you'll see 8 up there right now. We're looking to potentially going to try to condense them into 4 large ones. That makes sense. So most likely you're going to see like an east and a west theme is what is going to happen. But from there, you'll see all the other kind of dashed lines. That would be drilling down into the next sub-watershed. And really that's what we're going to continue to drill down into each watershed, and each one is going to still have an ability to have its own tailored solutions and be able to implement and bring up their own unique concerns, et cetera. So we're trying to move that along and also start to develop kind of a white paper for what it's going to look like in terms of what are the things we're going to look at in each watershed, what are the things that we want to study, what are some of the areas of concern, how does the outreach and education look, how does the sustained long-term performance look, monitoring. So we're going to start to look at all of that, but we just, from a visual perspective, we thought it'd be a good idea just to visualize kind of the different watersheds. And we had a lot of discussion east and west, and you can kind of see how that more or less tends to hold here
Would you be possibly splitting that?
Yeah, what we're looking to do
5% creek?
Well,
The east one or west one?
One of the items that we need to do is figure out how much legwork has already been done in these watersheds to really start to figure out what's missing. So as we develop that list of the different components we want to look at, some of that might already be available in some of these watersheds, and we can kind of look at those details to help us better understand if we would, to your point, start to carve it differently. That is our goal, is to carve this differently than what you're seeing. Potentially it's combining, watersheds 1 and 3 together. Maybe it's delineating the east end of number 3 a little bit differently, but we're going to be working on compiling a lot of that data to get an understanding, to see where it makes sense to combine watersheds and where it doesn't. Now, just because we will be combining watersheds, it's not gonna lose that detail because it's more of a, I guess, ease of maintenance, where a lot of the overarching information about what's going in a watershed that's mostly dominated by agriculture, in those sub-watersheds, that same information is probably still gonna hold true. And so that's how the hierarchy is gonna work in these kind of bigger themed areas, is we're trying to kind of have similar situations, have this overarching descriptions, but then dive into it further to describe that there's still differences, enough differences there that now we're going on a sub-watershed basis, really with the goal to develop a list of projects for these municipalities that would be, the discussion would be how close to shovel ready do we want them, to give them the ability to then use that to go get funding that might be available, not just through grants, but anything that might be out there. And that's really where anybody that's going to get money really needs to have all that detail worked out.
And the way it works now is, so like Abby worked on developing a watershed-based plan for Crystal Creek. So that's just one sub-watershed, so one of the dash lines.
It would be in this area that have a watershed.
What we're looking to do is have a watershed-based plan for the entire county. And that would empower, a variety of stakeholders, whether it's municipalities, townships, or, individual areas, to pursue grants to do improvement projects throughout the county. Right now, so Crystal Lake, it takes a lot of energy to create a watershed-based plan. And if you're only doing it for a small area, that plan's only valid for 10 years. So by the time you put all this energy in for that small area, then you have to try and do it for another small area. What we're proposing to do is kind of break it into larger sections. The colored areas are what are called watersheds. So it's a Huck 10. So it's encompassing a big area that can have multiple sub-watersheds in it. And so what we want to do is take more of a watershed or a Huck 10 approach across the county. And then that would encompass lots of sub-watersheds within it. And we'd still get to the same level of detail that Abby did with Crystal Lake. But instead of having 37 meetings throughout the county to create 37 individual plans, we're trying to create 4 or 5 plans throughout the county with that same level of detail. But the economy of scale that we'd be able to achieve, we could do a lot more with less money taking this approach. And we did meet with the Illinois EPA to make sure that that would be approved, because we don't want to put this level of effort in and not have a watershed-based plan that meets EPA standards that gives us access to that funding. So hopefully that makes sense. We did meet with Lake County as well, and they were able to do a similar approach. So they have the Lake Michigan watershed, then the North Branch of the Chicago River watershed, the Des Plaines watershed. Within each of those big watersheds are a number of smaller sub-watersheds. And so they were able to accomplish this in Lake County. And so we want to pursue FEMA money to do this watershed-based approach across the entire county as part of our update to our comprehensive stormwater management plan. And like I said, the overriding idea is to achieve economy of scale, to really achieve the same level of detail that you do in a watershed, individual sub-watershed plan, but within each of our bigger watersheds. And it's not neatly broken into 4 sections across the county. And so part of the reason we have this color up there, a colored map up there, is just so you can kind of see the Huck 10 watersheds and how we'll try and break things up so that they allow us to have the flexibility, because the needs in the southwest corner are going to be very different than the needs of the northeast corner. And so we want to be able to provide flexibility where it is viable, and really also provide the level of detail, based on the geology, the geography, the land use, the streams in those areas. And so it's really kind of a big approach, but we'd be able to hopefully have all of our plans meet EPA standards, which allow for grant application, and make it much easier for us to update these things. Once the plans are in place, you're not changing the foundation of those plans every 10 years. You're just updating the type of projects that are within there, because technologies are going to change, land use is going to change. So every 10 years, updating these things will take much less energy and much less money to revise these things. But if we have all these things done at a high level, you will be much better able to pursue grants and bring money into the county to do things that help us better reduce flooding, prevent erosion, address water quality issues throughout the entire county moving into the future.
Time frame on completing this one?
Well, we're hoping that we can develop the list of studies and different things that we want looked at for each watershed, kind of over the next several months, I would say. And then really start to assign dollar signs and start going out for proposals potentially sometime next year.
Okay.
That's kind of our goal, understanding with budgeting and everything, that it's kind of the time to start thinking about that is kind of April, May of every year. So we want to try to hit that next year to be at a point where we're far enough along to where we can start at least having those discussions. And we're going to need that level of detail if we want to pursue these different types of grant opportunities and funding opportunities as well.
The first step is to get this plan developed enough so that we can pursue the FEMA money. Because that's really the main thing. Are we going to be able to get funding to do this? And so far, the responses that we've gotten from the regulatory agencies has really been very positive.
We have also had Lake County reach out to us and ask us to coordinate part of the Fox River watershed. They'd like to do that in unison as well. So, and that was something that we weren't planning on doing. It's just since we've started this discussion and kind of the word got out, oh, McHenry County's doing this. We've had Lake County echo that. We've had interest from King County as well. So there is a lot of momentum behind this idea, and at every step, everyone we've talked to, hey, this sounds great. Let's see how you can pull it off is the big question, obviously. So we're hoping we can do that too.
And I guess I do want to, since I brought it up, I do want to emphasize it wouldn't be replacing the existing watershed plans. It would be building off of those. So all the effort that has gone in, because there are a large number of watershed-based plans that have already been developed, it in no way would be diminishing what's already been accomplished. It'd be building off of that and making it easier for them to expand what they've done to other watersheds within their communities.
Plus, it'll help bring that price tag down, right? So we don't want to duplicate any work.
Anything else on that subject?
No, that was really just giving you guys an update.
It does look great, the plan you're going to, though. I like that. Future topics. Anybody on future topics? I only have one, kind of an old topic, future topic. Joanna had asked or had mentioned when we were talking about the Coon Creek over there, drainage district, she had mentioned that the state or the federal government was conducting a study over in that area, all the way out to Rockford. Do you know anything about that?
I'm not.
We need an update on that if there is.
I'm not aware, but what it could be is potentially the floodplain in that area. Once you start getting up into that more west of the county and into Boone County, a lot of the flood zones are designated Zone A, which means they lack the detail, and the FEMA has a set of standards to say, hey, these are well enough defined to where we can start establishing elevations and start.
Okay, so we don't need to put that in future topics unless you come up with they've accomplished it.
Yeah, they're
They
doing,
may not have done it yet.
right, and they're in the process right now of, they've done it for the Nippersink where they're in this public comment period. So until really it moves through that whole entire process, I wouldn't be bringing it forward because it could still change depending on public comments. But we would have a certain amount of time to update that map revision.
Okay. All right, no, that was my only my question on that. And just to circle back to one thing, the first subject you had of changing just wanted to circle back and note that the one signature page on the grants for that's Joanne's name on there still. So if you can, make sure you change that when that comes back.
Yes, that, I think that is actually, and I didn't catch that, our wetland restoration fund.
Yes, I noticed that her name was on there, we need to change that.
I did look at that as well. I will take
Other than that, anybody else, anything else?
The only thing I would say is the website, where the Stormwater Commission has all the old members listed still.
Oh, okay.
Just to have that updated.
Yes, certainly.
All right, anything else? I have a motion to adjourn. Larry? Scott? All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right, thank you, guys. Good.
Nice to
What's this?
Oh, did he?
greenhouse.